Good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Hefkamp. I'm a SAP subject matter expert here at REI, and I'm also the business lead for retail back office technology, and I was the main developer for all of the GuiXT work on the retail side. Yeah. So a few things that we're going to go over today that you can expect to take away from my portion of the webinar is a quick overview of the REI user base, so who our users are and what they do. We're going to take a quick look at the project timeline. Then we're going to go over some detailed examples of a couple of the processes that I simplified with GuiXT. We're also going to look at a couple of processes that our merchandising team simplified with GuiXT, so lots of good before and after types of screenshots and discuss some specifics there. I'm going to talk about the time savings that we've realized since we rolled GuiXT out in early June. I'm going to talk about some implementation challenges that we faced and some learnings there, and then we're going to end with some feedback from our users. So first of all, who is REI? If you haven't heard of us before, we're an outdoor specialty retailer. We have about 125 stores across the country, and of course we also have rei.com. This year we'll do about $2 billion in sales. We have 11,000 employees, about 8,000 of which are from retail, 2 distribution centers, and we implemented SAP in the fall of 2010. A few quick notes about our users. Our retail users, like I said, we have about 8,000 in retail. About 1,400 of those use SAP, and those jobs consist of shippers, managers, and admins who all have slightly different roles in what they do in SAP. We also have about 200 headquarters users that are currently benefiting from GuiXT. I think we have more users beyond that, but our merchandising, finance, and master data teams are all using GuiXT right now. Forgive me, there's a slight delay here in the changing of the slides. Okay, so a couple of the challenges that we faced when we implemented SAP back in 2010. First off, most of our users are part-time users, so the responsibilities that they have around using SAP represent a relatively small part of their job, so they don't have a lot of time to sit down in front of a computer, learn these complex processes, do troubleshooting, read lots of documentation, etc. So their time is getting pulled from a lot of different places. Retail payroll constraints, of course. This is a challenge that every retailer faces, and we are always trying to do what we can to find efficiencies in our back rooms so that we can move those labor dollars out onto the sales floor. So there's always a little bit of pressure for our back office teams to be more efficient and spend their labor dollars out on the sales floor. Remote users, of course, I'm here in Kent, Washington at our headquarters, and all the retailers all of the users that I built the new screens for are spread across the country, which has made it very challenging to provide additional training and to provide support. Change management, of course, is always a big challenge. it was really for us with SAP. We replaced a number of systems that we had been using for a very long time, and there really wasn't anyone in the company that was not affected by the transition. So the change management was made even more difficult by I guess, challenge that the native SAP screens brought to our users. In terms of support, we have a retail operations group here, which I'm a part of, and we have an email and phone line that our stores can call when they need operational support. And I just sort of took a quick look, and over the last about the last 2 years since we implemented SAP back in the fall of 2010, we did around 2,000 phone calls and emails just helping stores with SAP. So that could be a 5-minute call to answer a quick question. It could be an hour-long impromptu training session. So really a lot of time spent on our part and a lot of time by our retail users just trying to get help when they need it. Quick look at our project timeline here. Whoops. See if I can go back to our timeline slide. Okay. So we had initially just 2 developers, myself representing retail, and an analyst over in our merchandising operations team, Wes Boone, who represented merchandising. We eventually have now taken on a 3rd from IT, Abi Gabella, and she is really responsible for all of the new groups that are getting GuiXT. We had 2 desktop support staff who helped push out the files and the software. And then we used some work from Synactive consultants. Really not too much, though. It was a really short timeline for the whole project. It was very small and light project. We really started looking at GuiXT last fall, and we started doing development about in the wintertime. We started a pilot with a handful of retail users, and I was actually developing new screens, getting their feedback. At the end of February, we got the official GuiXT training, and really not too long after that, we rolled out GuiXT to all of our retail stores on June 5th. So just a few months, 3 or 4 months between when we took the training and really got serious about the development to when we actually rolled out the new screens. Looking back, I wish we would have done the training a little bit earlier. I think we might have actually been able to push out or push our go live date up. Okay, so now we're going to jump into some of the specific examples of processes that I simplified, and then we're going to look at a couple of merchandising examples. One of the biggest challenges for my users in retail is just getting started. And one of my goals with SAP was that, or with GuiXT, is that I didn't want retail users to have to memorize any T codes. I wanted T codes to be just a thing of the past, and I wanted to build another way for folks to complete the tasks that they need to complete without having to memorize code. And also, I wanted the new user interface to be intuitive enough that users could sit down in front of a computer with a task, know that they have something they need to accomplish, open up SAP, and be able to, at the very least, sort of stumble their way through it, even if they have a very minimal amount of knowledge of SAP. And I think I accomplished both of those things. So just getting started was very challenging. Here's a list of maybe half or maybe less than half of the T codes that the retail users need to use on a daily basis. You have a task you need to do, sit down at the computer, and you really need to know which T code you need to use to accomplish that task. And now what retail users see when they open up SAP is the Launchpad, which is really the way that I was able to eliminate the usage of T codes altogether. Instead of the standard start screen where you have to type in a code, we've got custom buttons that are categorized here. The user site is printed up at the top, and this new Launchpad has really made it much easier for users to get started with that task that they have at hand, and it's made it much more approachable for less experienced users to accomplish something as well, because we have buttons here that are all REI language, and really easy now for folks to get started with the task at hand. So that was one of the just hugest benefits for us, was getting to a place where people knew how to get started with a task. Next, we're going to look at a complete process that I simplified with GuiXT. This is the process of creating a transfer. So a store has some inventory that they want to transfer either to another store or back to a distribution center. First, we're going to look at the native process, and then I'll show you what it looks like with GuiXT. There are two transactions involved. ME21N is the transaction that has to be used to create the purchase order. And then ZMIGO is sort of our custom version of the MIGO transaction. And that is what users have to use to, once the PO has been created, it has to be placed into transit. So we'll take a quick look at the native screens and then check out the simplified ones. So this is ME21N. First of all, you had to know that ME21N is the transaction you needed. Select UB stock transport order from the first drop-down. You can see a screen with a lot of different tabs, a lot of extraneous information here that's distracting and confusing for folks. Once you've selected the appropriate drop-down, you have to enter in a supplying site. This is one of those things that users were having to enter in over and over and over again, even though they only have permissions to enter one supplying site. It's always going to be the store that your home store, I guess. And in the native screens, you're continually asked to enter in your home store, basically. Once you've entered the supplying site, you can enter in some article numbers and some quantities. You can also see in this big table there are a lot of additional fields that aren't necessary. Once you've entered in a few articles and quantities, the next screen that you get, if you hit enter, or if we have a lot of accidental keystrokes, what will happen right away is a lot of those blank fields will populate with some useful information, but also you'll get error messages for every single line item. This was one of the most challenging things to deal with. Different types of error messages. We had yellow sort of warning messages, and then red kind of hard stop messages. In this case, you can see down at the bottom, users are getting prompted to enter a reach line item. So what they have to do here is start with the first line item, enter this alphanumeric reason code according to what it is that they're trying to do. So Z01 is the reason code we're needing to enter here. And do that for each line item. So entering a code, clicking next, entering the code again, clicking next, and just sort of seeing these various error messages, getting some other pop-up screens that are really just all part of the native process here. And were a challenge to deal with in developing new screens with GuiXT. Once you've entered in the reason code for all the line items, you can click execute or post in this case, and you will get a success message. You have created a PO number, and then you have the PO number. That's the first step in the process, and really the second step is just as critical. So at this point, the users need to really either write down or remember this PO number that's just been generated. Then they need to know that they have to go from ME21N into ZMIGO for the next part. And once they're in ZMIGO, they again have to choose a couple of drop-downs which will change the screen elements for every drop-down that you select. choose goods issue, purchase order, enter the PO number from the previous screen. You'll have to choose or enter in a movement type, and so this is another situation where there are many, many different movement types. Users had to have big printouts with descriptions so they would know which movement type they need for a particular task. There are a few dozen of them, all in all, that retail users need to use. And once you have the movement type entered, click Execute. The PO will, all the items on the PO that you just created in ME21N will come up. You have to click a checkbox next to each line item. You have to specify the storage location where the inventory is currently located. There are a couple of buttons here in the native screen that will help you with this. You have a contents button that will allow you to copy a selection all the way down. I make good use of that in my GuiXT function. You also have to choose stock type for each line item. So you have to go through one line item at a time, go down to the next line item, choose the stock type where your inventory is currently located, where you're going to be shipping it out of. And once you've done stock type for every line item, and if you haven't missed anything else or accidentally entered data into a bad field, you can click Post, and you'll have completed the process. And a packing slip will print, and users can then seal up the box and ship it off. Before I move on to what the new create transfer process looks like, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about error handling during this process. Like I mentioned earlier, in the native ME21N screen, there are a lot of errors that pop up. You get these sort of pop-up windows like you can see here, line item errors, warning messages, which in a lot of cases are irrelevant to our users, and then red error messages, which are hard stops, which you have to make a correction for, otherwise you cannot move forward. One really big challenge that we faced, and a very common error that created a lot of downstream work was related to this process. And a lot of users would do the first step. They would create the purchase order in ME21N, and then they would either forget what to do next, or they would have a problem in the second step when they're going to issue the purchase order. And they would get stuck, they wouldn't know what to do, and then they would just start over again. And the consequence of that was we would have users would create several different POs and goods issue against only one of them, but it created a lot of open POs in our system, and different teams, finance and the distribution center, had processes that were really impacted by that, where we were inadvertently receiving against some of these open POs, and really, causing a lot of extra downstream work. Folks at our distribution center would have to call the stores and talk about, work through the problem and help the store fix maybe multiple open POs that they had created. So that's error handling. In ME21N, and I'll go to the next slide and we can look at error handling in ZMIGO. Again, a lot of the same kind of things. You can see this is a pop-up window here where there's a yellow warning message. In this case, it's something about sales price, which isn't relevant to the user, but it's still there and it's still a distraction. And then a hard stop saying, the article that you entered does not exist in the storage location. So these are some challenging errors to work around. Now we can move on to the after screen, and so we'll take a look at what the new process looks like, and then also what the new error handling looks like. So this is create a transfer with GuiXT. We really we're able to combine the two different transactions into a single screen here. where we capture all of the relevant information on the first screen. The user gets here by clicking one of those simple buttons from the Launchpad that says Create Transfer on it. All they're required to do is enter in a destination site, a couple selections from drop-downs, enter in articles and quantities, and click Create. And everything else, the native process happens on the back end, but the user just doesn't know it. So brought everything onto a single screen with custom language, custom fields. Dealt with error handling. I'll show you in the next screen what the new error handling looks like. I wrote a cool function that if the user made some bad selections initially and they get themselves into a situation where the PO needs to be deleted, I have a function that will automatically go in and delete the PO for a user. So I don't have screenshots for it here, but basically you get to a situation where you've reached some errors and you can't move forward. Instead of having the user go back and open up the PO in a different transaction, ME22N, and go through the process of deleting it, it's all built into the function here, so it just happens automatically. And lastly on the screen, we've restricted user input, as you can see, custom drop-down menus. The user's home site is defaulted on the back end. And once you click Create here, you get that simple success message that your STO, your stock transporter, has been created. You get the number, and your packing slip prints out right away. That's if you didn't have any problem with the items that you're trying to transfer. We'll take a quick look at some of the error handling here. And in this situation, the user has entered in a hazardous item. So it's sort of flagged in SAP as a hazardous item, and it will not allow users to transfer it out of the store. This is a lot of our GPS units that have certain types of batteries. We can receive in stores, but since we're not hazmat trained out in our retail stores, we can't ship those items, and so SAP will block transferring of those. In this case, the user entered in a hazmat item from the initial screen. They clicked on the Create button, and what I've done here is I captured the native error message, which is a hard stop. It says on this line item is a hazardous article, and it gives you the article number, and it's saying transfer is not possible. And then I have some custom instructions up at the top here that help guide the user. It's just some simple language. There is an error. Please use the warning prompts as a guide to remove the items. And the user just has to select the line, click delete, and then the process will restart again and finish up without that hazardous item. So this is a good example of how I've used some of my own messaging, but also captured the native SAP message and sort of displayed all those things on one screen in a way that's easy for the user to understand what they need to do to fix their problem here. So once they've removed that item, they can click Next, and the transfer will complete successfully. The next process we're going to look at is the process of scrapping, and this is something that's required on a daily basis in all of our stores, and it's an inventory movement process where we're needing to move inventory or move items out of our inventory basically and expense them. If you've ever shopped at our stores, you know we have a really great return policy, and so if someone returns an item because it didn't fit quite right, or they used it and a couple times and didn't quite like it, we'll take it back and give them a refund. But then, of course, now we have this inventory that can't be resold as first quality, and so we have to process it out of our inventory. So this is a quick look at what's required to do that, what was required to do that on the desktop. It was a pretty complex process. I'm not going to talk through each one of the steps here, but you can see this is in ZMIGO again. The user has to select a couple different drop-down menus. They have to know exactly which movement type to choose. There are a number of tabs across the bottom that's sort of easy to get lost in. All in all, about 15 steps if you just want to scrap one item. And if you're adding additional items, it's redoing several of these steps over and over and over again. And we're getting many, many of these items. You come back through our customer service stations every single day. So this is one of the big time savers for us. And we'll take a look now at what the scrapping looks like on the desktop with GuiXT. Users click on a button from the Launchpad that says Scrap, which is about as easy as it gets. And they have a few drop-downs to choose from. The movement type is still there, but with sort of a custom description. They have to select the storage location, and then they have to select the reason. So where is the inventory right now? Why are you moving it? And then click Next. And I have custom logic built in here so that users have to make a selection for each drop-down. And so you click Next, and that'll take users to the item entry screen where they can enter articles and quantities. Very basic instructions here. There's really not much to know. Enter the article numbers and click Execute. I've got the selections from the previous screen printed here so that if you stepped away for a minute, you can come back and remember exactly what it is that you were doing. And taken those, maybe 15 or 16 steps from the native process and really pared it down and made it very simple so that almost anyone in the store that has SAP access can pretty easily complete this task now. So next we're going to take a look at a couple transactions that our developer in merchandising worked on. And we're going to look at two. The first one is MM43, and this is what our merchandising team and some other teams use to display article information. So this is just a display type of transaction. In this case, you're not really taking an action on an article. You're just viewing the information associated with it. I know it's a very busy, maybe sort of overwhelming slide to look at, but there are a lot of different screen elements here. There's a lot going on in this transaction, and I think it's a pretty fair illustration of the complexity of MM43. So users would pull up the transaction in the top left screen and enter in an article number, and from there they'd get these multiple tabs, maybe about 7 or 8 tabs with pop-up windows in each of those tabs. They contain the information that's relevant to us, some of the information that's relevant to us, and then a lot of information that we just don't care about. So this is some great work that Wes Boone on our merchandising team completed. And we'll take a look at what the MM43 after GuiXT looks like. And it's really just sort of two different screens. The top left is very simple, 2 fields where a user can enter an article or UPC number and click a button. And simple 1 line of instructions at the top there. And then all those fields that you saw on the previous screen in each different tab, those are all printed on one screen and with some language changes here to make it easy for the users to understand. So what GuiXT basically does is takes the article number or UPC, puts it in MM43, clicks Execute, goes into each of those necessary fields, and then returns them and prints them all on this single screen. And I believe every field on the screen is a custom field. So that was a big time saver for our merchandising team, and really saved a lot of headaches of clicking from one tab to another to try to find some relevant data. Next, we're going to look at the second merchandising example, and this is ME31K, Create Vendor Terms Agreement Contract. And this one is maybe about 5 steps or so, but it's something that we do I think about maybe certainly thousands of every year, and this is work that we do seasonally as we're creating vendor contracts. So it's the type of thing where we're having to bring in extra temporary help to create all these contracts. Sometimes very, very time-consuming process. I'm not going to talk through all the different steps, but you can see generally several different screens that the person creating the contract needs to go through. Only a couple of different relevant fields, and but still, the native screens present a lot of opportunity for errors. Go through about 5 screens and click Execute. If you did everything right, you'll create one contract. And here we'll take a look at what ME31K looks like now. So this is very, very simple now. The user who's creating the contract just needs to enter a vendor number. The payment terms are really just choosing payment terms just involves clicking a drop-down menu and making a selection. And we've got some custom language in there. Valid dates and any notes that the user wants to make. And then just have to click Create New Contract, and that's it. The contract has been created. So this has really been a big time saver for us, and a great function that I think our merchandising team is enjoying the benefits of. So now I'll just talk for a minute about some of our implementation challenges. Handling multiple user groups was a little bit tricky for us. We have retail users, merchandising users, master data, finance, different groups that have overlap in the transactions that they use. So how do we handle the situation where retail users and merchandising users both need to use ME21N? And we want to have their own individual customized screens for a retail user and a customized screen for a merchandising user. We were able to basically use GuiXT to write a function that would look at a user's profile and look at their user group, basically. And if you're part of the retail user group, then you're shown, you're directed to one script or a section within a script. And if you're in a different group, then you'll see something else. And so we were pretty easily able to work around this issue of multiple user groups by conditionalizing everything and having a function that goes in and looks to see what type of user is trying to access the scripts. Activation and deactivation was a little bit tricky. You can turn GuiXT on and off, and we wanted our merchandising users to be able to turn it on and off. We did not want our retail users to be able to turn it on and off. So really separate, very, very different requirements from one group of users to another. We were able to do that with the way that we installed GuiXT basically, and it took a little bit of work, but we were able to get around that issue. And so now retail users do not have the ability to turn it off, and headquarters users do if they wish. GuiXT version consistency among groups was a little bit tricky. When we were doing our initial development, we found a couple of bugs and worked with the Synactive folks to work through those, get new versions out. They were really quick about it. But it was a challenge for us when the developer and merchandising would discover a bug, get a new version of the software, and myself and maybe our one other developer would have to do some sort of regression testing to make sure that that the new software worked on all of our stuff. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but we're past that now, and everyone is on the same version, and we don't have any bugs or any issues like that. few key learnings, things that really worked well and some things that we wish we had done differently. The developers, myself, and then our developer in merchandising, as I think Dee mentioned initially, we don't have a background in any sort of programming language. We were able to learn how to use the GuiXT tool, and we were able to learn JavaScript. It was really, really valuable that we were able to do a lot of the development because we knew the process very well. We knew exactly what our users wanted. We think we wound up with a great end result because of that. Early GuiXT training would be best. Like I mentioned earlier, we wish we would have maybe had our training a month or two ahead of time, and it really would have sped up our development. Reevaluate our T-code usage is something I wish we would have done from from the initial stages. Basically, what I mean by that is that we went back and sort of asked some questions about why did we choose to use a particular T-code to accomplish particular tasks when we went live with SAP 2 years ago, and reevaluated at least one or two of those choices, and we've actually, in a couple cases, decided to use a different T-code, build the scripts off of a different T-code, and use GuiXT to develop on a different T-code than we were using originally. And so there's a little bit of duplicate work that was required there. And in going back, I would have wanted to look into that sooner. The fact that we had our IT groups involved very early on was really useful. A lot of the development that's happening right now is by one person who's based in our COE, and it was good to have them involved from the very beginning. All of the first conversations they were a part of. And in the case where the developers are not coming from the business, really, we've seen how important it is that the T-code owner is involved in the very early stages, and also just having a constant dialogue with the developer, because there are so many little subtle decisions that are being made about how you would want to revise the process and change a T-code around. So this is something that we've done, and we've realized that we're seeing a big benefit from it. So some of the benefits that we're seeing out in retail, we put out a survey about just a few weeks ago, and we asked folks, how much time do you think that the new user interface has saved you? And from that, we found that we're saving about 26,000 hours a year across the company, and just in day-to-day time savings. And again, there's a lot more than just the reducing 15 steps to 5 steps. A lot of the time that's being saved is not having to call a friend for help at another store, not having to call our retail operations team for help, not having to flip through pages of documentation to figure out how to accomplish a simple task. Really, that just sort of evaporated when we rolled out GuiXT. In terms of training, we asked how long did it take you to, we asked our retail users how long it took to learn Native SAP, and they said about 22 hours to learn the native screens. And the training that I'm writing right now for the new revised GuiXT screens, I'm estimating it's going to take about 3.5 hours or so. So a really big savings in training per person. It's also notable to point out that we rolled out the new interface without any training at all, and people were able to, it was intuitive enough that people were able to just start using it without any problem. Some other great benefits, of course, job satisfaction. There's less frustration. We have greater flexibility in our stores, easier to cover for people that are sick, a pretty big reduction in errors, and a lot less backtracking involving multiple teams trying to fix a problem that happened or that was instigated in a retail store. So a quick graph with the results from our survey. Users were really happy with the new interface. We asked, overall, how satisfied are you? We asked a lot more detailed questions too, but the overall satisfaction is great. 90%, more than 90% are between satisfied and very satisfied. 60% gave a 6 or 7 out of 7. So that's really great results for us. It's not that often that we roll out something that has that's received that well. And lastly, a couple comments. The new interface required no training. Just clicked on icons and started using it. Much more user-friendly. The user-friendliness is an order of magnitude better, and it's almost too easy now. So a lot of happy users out in retail who are able to focus their energy on doing things other than scratching their heads and reading documentation. So thanks, everyone. And with that, I guess I'll pass it back to Dee.
Okay, thanks, Todd. That was great information. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to get into some questions here in the next 5 minutes or so. But before we do that, wanted to go over some of the events we're going to be at. You'll see here a list of ASUGs we'll be at. TechEd is a big show for us. And the end of October is the projects reporting as well as the mobility conference in Las Vegas. So please stop by and come see us. And okay, so now we'll open up for Q&A. We have quite a few here. And I'm going to have Aparna Desai take over the section. Thank you, Dee. So it looks like most of the questions are targeted towards you. I'll do the question. The first one is, how many users do you have for GuiXT? Was the survey done with all those users?
How many users total do we have for GuiXT? We have about 1,400 or so in retail, and another couple hundred at headquarters. But the number of people that we have that are using SAP in general is growing because it's now much easier to use. So we think we're going to see in terms of number of users, we think we're going to see that go up a little bit just now that it's a lot easier for folks to get in and accomplish tasks in SAP.
Thank you. The next question is, are your GuiXT scripts managed locally on individual PCs or in a shared location?
So the way that our scripts are managed is they're held in sort of a central repository. When users open up SAP, so let's say for the first time or when scripts have been updated, if there's a new script, it'll be downloaded locally to their machine, and it'll read from the machine. Or if it's the first time they're logging into SAP, each time they go to a new screen, the script will be downloaded really quickly, and from that point on, it'll be read locally off their machine.
Thank you. And to expand on that, there are multiple ways you can store the scripts. You can put them on a central server, on a shared file share. It's a pretty easy setup. The disadvantage is you have an XML dependency on that server. The recommended method, and that is what REI is using as well, is to put the scripts in the SAP web repository. There's a transaction called SMW0 that you can use to upload the scripts into SAP and then use your regular transport to move them across the landscape from dev to go to production. And within the configuration file, you can turn on the cache, which Todd was talking about, wherein when the user goes to that screen, it will download the script from the repository, put it in a local cache in an encrypted form. So it does not have to make that call every time you visit that screen. The next question is, did you have to change anything on the backend SAP to make GuiXT work?
We did not have to change anything on backend GuiXT or backend SAP to make GuiXT work.
Do you have any other projects coming up with GuiXT?
Oh, is that a question for me to answer?
Yeah, that's what we'll ask you.
At the moment, we're focusing on expanding our GuiXT development and usage into other teams. So there are still a number of groups that are using native screens that could really benefit from GuiXT. So right now we're focusing on just expanding the number of users and the number of teams that are going to be able to experience the time savings benefits.
Great, thank you. The other question is, in the project, I can't understand the complete question, but basically it's asking, you did the development on GuiXT. Was it from start to finish, and was an REI resource doing all the development?
Yeah, so as I sort of mentioned earlier, development was sort of broken down by the business owners, I guess. I did all of the development for retail. As I mentioned, I used we used Synactive Consulting for a few specific things. I actually had used several consulting hours just to have sort of a final review of all of my scripting, because I was going to be rolling mine out to a lot of different users. High potential impact to the business if something didn't go well. So had everything checked out. But I mean, I would say that for retail, I did 80 or 90% of the development all by myself.
Thank you, Todd. The next question is it possible to work with ABAP, the GenPro, for example, any new general app from SAP and an NWBC front end? I'll take that question. The answer is yes, GuiXT is compatible with the Network Business Client. You can make changes to your SAP screens and render in that environment. The next question is, do you have a lot of custom enhancements embedded in native SAP transactions?
As far as I know, at least for our retail transactions, we do not have a lot of custom enhancements embedded. Just a couple that I know of, but in many cases, we're just using the native transactions.
The next one is, each SAP user need a GuiXT license. Any SAP user that uses GuiXT changes or simplification would need a GuiXT license. Not all your SAP users need one, only the ones that use GuiXT enhancements. And we'll take maybe one more question. We're running over a little bit here. So this might have been asked already, but how does this compare to the free version that comes with standard SAP install? And I can answer that. The free version that comes with SAP allows you to make screen changes on a per-screen basis only. So you can hide the fields, move them around, add defaults, and change the labels of the fields on per-screen basis. With the licensed version, you have the capability to combine the screens, combine the multiple transactions, as Todd was showing in the webinar. You can combine all your business processes onto one or two screens. You can also render those transactions or those simplified screens to a mobile device, an iPad. You can take it offline, but all that requires a license. With the free version, all you can do is simple changes on per-screen basis. Okay. So there are a few more questions. We'll follow up with you through email. We're running out of time here, but we'll follow up with all the questions that have been not answered on this webinar.
Okay, so again, for any additional information, please go to www.guixt.com and or please send us email at rfi@guixt.com. And also, don't forget to fill out the survey at the end of the GoToWebinar, as this information will help us guide us in future webinars. Thank you very much for joining the Synactive team as well as Todd from REI, and we hope that you can join us in our next webinar. Thanks again.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.